Have you ever wondered what the philosophy of neurodivergence is? Not just the surface level, but deeper elements to the movement? Well, today I'm going to give you an overview of my philosophy of neurodivergence. I'm going to start by reading an excerpt from an essay I wrote recently. I think there are two separate elements to the neurodiversity movement. First and most importantly, it is a form of self-knowledge. Neurodiversity is a growing awareness of the deep differences in how minds function. Many neurodivergent experiences reflect a priori patterns, intrinsic modes of thought and perception that aren't learned but are uncovered over time through lived experience. Secondly, it is a political movement, one that advocates not just for inclusion or accommodation, but for the validation of different emotional logics, sensory realities, and lifestyles. So, to build off of what I said in that essay, I want to clarify that there's this conventional aspect of autism, the fact that is more outward, more political, the part that is aimed at getting us acceptance by the wider world. But neurodivergence isn't just about the environment. There are innate patterns, a priori, that we discover as we grow as people. And as the disciplines of psychology and therapy give us more knowledge to work with and understand ourselves better. There are many people who only focus on the outward parts of neurodivergence, such as political inclusion or accommodation. And this is very important because it helps us as autistic or any kind of neurodivergent. It helps us find autonomy in spaces that otherwise would ignore our existence. But there is a deeply exploratory aspect to neurodivergence that is separated to a large extent from these conventional aspects of neurodivergence, where people are learning about themselves. They're discovering patterns that they go through which diverge from what is considered normal and affect their functioning. And oftentimes, these differences end up being the awareness of something that we once thought we could push through that actually is an aspect of disability. But these two different qualities of the neurodivergent experience come together when we are trying to understand what lifestyles are neurodivergent affirming and which kinds of lifestyles repress neurodivergence, which kinds of lifestyles make us live in fear or anxiety or in constant overstimulation. And it is the goal of the political aspects of neurodivergence to free the neurodivergent from non-neurodivergent affirming lifestyles. Create a society where workism or over-identifying with one's labor isn't causing neurodivergence to be put into boxes that cause them to constantly suffer to meet the expectations of a neurotypical standard. These neurodevelopmental patterns that are observed in neurodivergence are a priori because people are born with them. They're not something that's only conditioned through experience. And by understanding this, we can stop looking in the wrong places for solutions to help autistic people live healthy lives, to help people with ADHD or BPD or whatever struggles people are going through. We can understand that parts of these neurodevelopmental profiles are not created through experience, but are created innately because of differences in neurology and the way people's brains work. What we should be doing is not trying to see how to use the environment to change people as if neurodivergence is something that needs to be corrected or is an impurity. But we should be looking at the environment trying to see, how can we create lifestyles that uplift people with different kinds of neural patterns, different kinds of needs in terms of sensory needs or attention needs, or whatever it may be for that particular person's neurotype, instead of putting excessive blame and responsibility on neurodivergence to change certain a priori patterns that are not going to change in the first place because they were born with those patterns. And just because society doesn't like to accept those kinds of differences doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to secure rights that are secure and affirming for people with different neurotypes. So my philosophy of neurodivergence is taking the political and social elements of the movement and the introspective and contemplative elements of the movement and bringing them into one so people can live lives that are fulfilling and not constantly overstimulating, and taking away this pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality while still promoting autonomy and agency to the degree that each person is willing to be able to accomplish. Giving people the space to recover from burnout isn't being lazy. It isn't being incompetent. And competence shouldn't be the only way that people are freed to have a lifestyle that is healthy for them. There are people who are going to be hypostimulated, meaning they need more stimulation to feel at peace. And people who are sensory neutral, where they can be more flexible, and people who are hyperstimulated, meaning they're more anxious and overstimulated even in solitude or quiet. The expression of different neurotypes is empirical, but the structures behind them are a priori, not born from individual history, but from the shared human architecture of the human mind. Modern systems and lifestyles often ignore these a priori differences, creating universal standards of stimulation that only suit one type of person, leading to unavoidable suffering for people with different stimulation profiles. We must create lifestyles that match different stimulation profiles instead of trying to unify people under one kind of lifestyle that's often way too overstimulating for people who are neurodivergent. So this is a brief introduction to my philosophy of neurodivergence based on a book that I will be releasing fairly soon. So if this interests you and you want to learn more as I release more videos on this, please subscribe and like this video. Leave a comment if you have questions. And I plan to make more videos like this over the next few months. So thank you and see ya.